Hi, I'm Anthony Smith, market expert and economist here at FreightWaves, and I'm here with
Ibrahim Ban, Chief Economist at FreightWaves.
And today we're going to be taking a look at overall retail sales and the trends that are going on right now. First off, we're going to start off with total retail sales. When we're looking at total retail sales, we see that there was a pretty nice spike in 2018, mid-2018, where sales were kind of getting into that 6.5% mark. And as of now, we're kind of seeing sales modulate between that 3.5%.
It's very interesting. 2018 was a spectacular year for retail growth, but it's downshifted quite a bit. Now that has some pretty important implications, and most importantly, I think it's important to remember that a lot of the strength that's currently coming from retail sales is really just coming from e-commerce performance in the economy. That, like, if you were to take this retail figure of about 3 to 3.5%, if you stripped out e-commerce, it would be about 1% to 1.5% of growth in retail activity. And so, when thinking about what that means for shippers and for the economy overall, consider that there's a significantly different kind of supply chain and logistics operation between traditional brick and mortar retail spending and e-commerce performance, because e-commerce requires last mile delivery along with it, whereas traditional brick and mortar, you're kind of thinking about how you restock physical locations and keeping inventory sufficient for people that are coming into the stores.
Right, and so one of the main things that you're saying is that we're seeing is a shift in the overall retail sales. Like you said, there's a modulating trend that's kind of getting back to that 3.5%. New highs aren't reaching the 2018 levels, but it's kind of really settling in at that 3.5%, still strong overall.
Right, exactly. I think 3 to 3.5% is perfectly fine for the retail sector, especially considering how difficult the comps are to last year. Right. So having 3 to 3.5% isn't necessarily strong retail sales. Isn't necessarily weak retail sales, but just keep in mind that so much of it is coming from e-commerce performance, and really the traditional brick and mortar retailers, they aren't doing as well as what the overall retail figures might suggest.
Right. So, with the shift to e-commerce, how does that really change the landscape overall when we're looking at the supply chain or even with overall employment data looking at retail sales?
Yeah, I think it's actually really, really obvious when you take a look at the employment data that while the rest of the economy has been adding jobs at a pretty rapid clip throughout the course of 2018 and 2019, retail employment has really kind of stalled. Like it held fairly steady last year, where the retail sector wasn't necessarily adding jobs or losing jobs. But keep in mind that was a sort of a record high kind of growth year for the retail environment. So even with all that retail growth, employment wasn't really growing. And now that growth is downshifted in the retail sector, you're actually starting to see retail employment go down as well. Retail has actually declined in each of the last 4 months. June's numbers came out about a week and a half ago, showed another decline in retail employment. And again, it's all tied to this idea that, like, while retail sales figures look pretty good, most of it is coming from this e-commerce channel, this last mile channel of retail, and not necessarily the traditional brick and mortar outlets. Now, this has pretty important implications for freight and freight activity. If you think about like how freight movements work, a traditional brick and mortar retail movement involves just big truckload shipments of inventories going into retail locations. When you think about e-commerce, again, you're talking about last mile delivery, being able to deliver directly to the end consumer. That's good news for like parcel companies and smaller shipments, LTL. They typically do well when e-commerce is doing well. Right. And so you're not going to see the same kind of big benefit on for say bigger freight shipments because the brick and mortar outlets aren't doing nearly as well.
Right. And one of the things that I always get asked as an economist, we see the trends, but everyone wants to know what the forecast is. And so, how are the fundamentals looking right now in the retail segment? And are there any catalysts that you think are going to shift things overall to a major downshift, or are things pretty stable here?
Well, I generally think about retail as being the combination of the ability to pay for things and the willingness to pay for things. So the ability means how is your income growth doing? What are credit conditions looking like? And then the willingness talks about like consumer confidence and things like how do consumers feel about the state of the economy? And right now things look pretty good. I mean, job growth is solid, income growth is still fairly solid in the economy, inflation is pretty low, so that means that consumers are able to go out and buy quite a bit. Consumer confidence took a bit of a hit over the past couple of months, but I think it's still generally elevated. So as long as you're in this kind of high income growth, elevated consumer confidence environment, good job growth, I think retail is going to be fine. It's one of the areas of demand that I'm worried less about in the economy. Like there's significant concerns about other areas of the economy, but I think retail, at least for the near future, looks very good.
Awesome. So it sounds like we have good news here overall for the retail segment, and we're going to be monitoring the overall retail market as we move throughout the second half of 2019. But it's good to hear from our chief economist here that we are in a good place overall and that there are strong fundamentals supporting these trends.